Hello, this is Math with Beth, and we are going to look at the slope of a line today. So remember, when you're dealing with slopes, it is basically how steep the line is. So make sure you're always thinking of the line as going from left to right. So in this case, if you were looking from left to right, it's definitely going up. So this one has a positive slope. And this one would have a negative slope because it is going down. When trying to find the slope, if you have an equation, a graph right in front of you, sorry, you can just count, but you just need to know what you're looking for. So remember that slope is rise over run, which means you can always turn it into a fraction, and the top number is telling you how far up or down. So even though it says rise, it could technically be falling. Rise over how far to the right. So we're going to look at 2 points and count how much we would have to go either up or down to get to the next point, and then how much would we have to go to the right. So in this graph, I'm going to go from this point to this point, but it could have been this point to one way up here. It does not matter what 2 points you pick, as long as they're nice points that you can tell exactly where they're hitting the graph. So if I go from this one to this one, and I first count how much up or down, it would definitely be up, and it would be up 2. And then I would go to the right 3. So from one point to another point that I can easily see, I would count up 2 over 3. If we went from this point to one much higher, it might have been something like up 4 over 6. Seems like a different slope, but if you reduce it, that is the same thing as 2 over 3. So it should not matter what 2 points you pick. So this is the slope of this line. Over here, I would go from here to here, because again, you go always left to right. So this time I would definitely have to say that I'm falling, and we use M for slope. So since I'm falling, it would be a -1, but then I'm still going to the right. So the negative only will have to do with when you are falling, and that will only affect the top number. Since we're always going to go to the right, the bottom number should always be positive. There are 2 special types of lines, though, where you can do it the same method, but it sometimes gets confusing because zeros are involved. So these 2 I consider special lines, and it is easiest to just memorize what types of slopes they have. So this is a special line because it's straight up and down. It's called a vertical line. And its slope is undefined. The reason why is if you did do the numbers, if you took 2 points and did the work, you would end up with a 0 in the bottom of the fraction. So instead of saying your slope is something like 4 over 0, that really means undefined. Because remember, we can never divide by 0. Over here, if it's a horizontal line and you did the work, you'd end up finding out that you would have a 0 on the top of the fraction, which is totally fine. It just means that your answer would be 0. So vertical lines always have an undefined slope, and horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. And lastly, what if we don't have a graph, so we can't count, and it's not a special graph? We can use the slope formula that looks fancy, but all it's really saying is if you have 2 points, subtract the 2 different y values on the top. And that's kind of like finding out your rise, and then subtract the 2 x values on the bottom, which is finding out your run. So if you need to, you can name these. Whatever point you have, you can name one of them x1 and y1, and you can name the other one x2 and y2, just to make it easier if you want to use the formula. So in this case, I would say my slope is -2 minus 3 over 4 minus a -1. A lot of people mess up here because once they write the minus and then they see the -1, they think, oh, I don't need to write the minus again. But you do, because the one in the middle is because of the formula telling you to subtract. And the second negative goes with the 1 because the x was -1. So make sure you put in exactly what you see. So on top, -2 minus 3 is -5. 4 minus -1, when you have minus a negative, you switch it to plus. So that gives us a +5. But -5 over 5 is really -1. So that is how you would find slope with a graph, or if you had 2 points. I hope that helped. See you next time. Bye.